You're not family. You only stayed because it was convenient. My daughter said that while signing the inheritance papers. My son-in-law stayed quiet. I just signed another sheet and left in silence. 4 weeks later, she found out what I had signed. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. The rain tapped against my windshield as I pulled into the law office parking lot. My arthritic hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, partly from the pain, partly from the anxiety gnawing at my stomach. I didn't know why Emily had called me to sign these papers today, but her tone left no room for questions. Just be there at 3, Mom. Don't be late. These papers need your signature. I turned off the engine and sat there watching raindrops race down the glass. At 66, I'd thought I was past the stage of feeling like a scolded child. Apparently, not inside. The receptionist barely looked up as I shook the rain from my umbrella. "They're waiting for you in conference room B," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been, each step forward carrying the weight of something final. I'd been feeling it for months now, the subtle shift in how Emily looked at me, the way conversations stopped when I entered rooms, the whispered discussions between her and Daniel. I knocked softly before entering. They were both there, Emily in her crisp navy suit, Daniel beside her, his attention fixed on a stack of papers. Neither stood when I entered. "You're 5 minutes late?" Emily said, not looking up from her phone. "I'm sorry the rain. It's fine. Just sit down. We have things to do after this." I settled into the hard-backed chair across from them, placing my worn purse on my lap. For a moment, the only sound was the shuffling of papers as Daniel arranged them in front of me. "These are the final distribution papers for Dad's estate," Emily explained, her voice clinical. "We've already gone through everything. This is just a formality to transfer the remaining assets." I nodded, though I knew there was more to it. After losing Robert 5 years ago, I'd moved in with Emily and Daniel to help with little Ethan. What started as a grandmother's lovemaking breakfast, handling school pickups, reading bedtime stories, had slowly morphed into something else. I'd become the live-in help. Convenient, but not quite family. Daniel slid the papers toward me. "Sign where the tabs are," he said, his voice flat. It was the most he'd spoken to me in weeks. As I reached for the pen, my hand trembled slightly. "What exactly am I signing away?" I asked, my voice softer than intended. Emily sighed, the exasperated sound I'd grown too familiar with. "Mom, it's just formalities. Everything Dad left for both of us. The house, the accounts, his investments. We've been over this." I hadn't been over anything. Since Robert's death, financial discussions happened without me behind closed doors. But I nodded anyway and began signing. "I'm glad this is finally getting settled," Daniel said to Emily as if I weren't there. "We can move forward with the renovations next month." "Renovations to my house?" "The home Robert and I had built together." I paused, pen hovering over the next tab. "What renovations?" Emily's eyes met mine, something cold and unfamiliar in them. "We're gutting the old place. It's outdated and we need the space for entertaining." "But that's my home," I whispered. "It's just a house, Mom, and technically it's our house now." I felt the air leave my lungs. "I don't understand." Emily leaned forward, placing her manicured hands flat on the table. "Let me make this clear. We're done playing house. You've been staying with us because it made sense when Ethan was younger. He's in school full-time now." "But I thought—" "You thought what? That you'd live with us forever. That wasn't the deal." I stared at my daughter, this stranger, with familiar eyes. "What deal? I came to help you after your father died, and we appreciated that, but it's time for you to find your own place." My pen clattered to the table. Where will I go? For the first time, Daniel looked uncomfortable, but Emily's expression remained unmoved. There's a nice retirement community in Maplewood. We've already looked into it for you. The words hit like physical blows. A retirement home. They'd been planning this. All those hushed conversations, the sudden questions about what furniture I wanted to keep, the casual mention of an old friend who loved her new senior living arrangement. I reached for the pen again, a strange calm settling over me. I would sign, I would walk out. I would disappear from their perfectly curated lives. As I added my final signature, Emily gathered the papers without a word of thanks. She slid them into a folder, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. The ring Robert had helped Daniel pick out for her. Is that all? I asked, rising slowly. That's all, Daniel confirmed, still not meeting my eyes. I clutched my purse, turned to leave, but Emily's voice stopped me. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're not family. You just stayed because it was convenient for all of us. The words cut deeper than any knife. I didn't turn back. I didn't let her see the tears that sprang to my eyes. I simply walked out, my footsteps echoing in the hallway. 4 weeks later, she would discover what I had actually signed. 4 weeks later, everything would change. But in that moment, as I walked to my car in the rain, I was just an old woman with a broken heart and nowhere to call home. My small motel room felt simultaneously claustrophobic and too empty as I unpacked the single suitcase of belongings Emily had deemed mine. The rest of my life, 4 decades of memories, trinkets, and treasures remained in the house that was no longer my home. I placed Robert's photograph on the nightstand, my fingers lingering on his smiling face. You'd be so disappointed, I whispered to him. That night, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, memories flooded in, not as gentle waves, but as a crushing tsunami. I remembered Emily as a little girl, her front teeth missing, rushing to show me her spelling test with the gold star. I remembered her high school graduation, how proud Robert and I had been as she gave her valedictorian speech. I remembered her wedding day, how Robert had whispered, "We did good, Margaret." As we watched her dance with Daniel, and then came Robert's diagnosis, pancreatic cancer, 9 months, the doctor said. He lived for 8 fighting with everything he had. Promise me you'll take care of each other. Robert had whispered in his hospital bed, holding both my hand and Emily's. We'd both nodded, tears streaming down our faces. A promise I had kept, a promise she had discarded. When Robert died, Emily was pregnant with Ethan. She and Daniel had just bought their new house. Their careers were taking off, and they were overwhelmed. It seemed natural when they suggested I move in to help with the baby. Just until we get our footing, Mom Emily had said. It would mean everything to us. I sold my little condo without hesitation. What did I need it for? My family needed me. The first year with Ethan was a blur of midnight feedings, first smiles, and the pure joy of watching a new life unfold. Emily went back to work, and I settled into a routine with my grandson. We became a team, Ethan and I. But as the years passed, something shifted. Emily's requests became demands. Daniel's gratitude turned to expectation. The guest room became Margaret's room, not Mom's or Grandma's. Could you have dinner ready by 7? The Brightons are coming over. Ethan needs to be picked up early from school today. One of us will be home by 8:30. We've got that charity event tonight. You don't mind handling bedtime again, do you? I didn't mind. Not really. I loved Ethan, loved being part of his life, but slowly and visibly, I was being erased. From mother to nanny, from family to staff. There was the Christmas party when I overheard Emily introducing me to her colleagues. This is Margaret, She helps us with Ethan. Not my mother. That stung. Then came Ethan's school events, where Emily would arrive late, take over with a bright smile, graciously thanking me for filling in as if I were hired help, not his grandmother. The morning light was creeping through the thin motel curtains before I finally drifted off. Exhaustion overcoming heartache. I woke to a pounding on my door. Disoriented, I fumbled for my glasses and checked the time. 10:37 a.m. I never slept this late. Mrs. Collins, you need to check out by 11 Hosro if you're staying another night. A gruff voice called through the door. Yes, thank you. I'll be down shortly. I called back, my voice scratchy from crying and lack of sleep. I dressed slowly, my joints protesting more than usual. Age or heartbreak. It was hard to tell the difference sometimes. As I gathered my meager toiletries from the bathroom, my phone rang. Emily's name flashed on the screen. My heart leaped traitorously. Had she changed her mind? Was she calling to apologize? I answered, trying to keep the hope from my voice. Hello, Mom. Where are you? Her tone was all business. At the Sunrise Motel on Riverdale Road. A motel? Good grief. Why didn't you go to Aunt Linda's? Linda lived 2 hours away and hadn't spoken to me since Robert's funeral, when she accused me of monopolizing the sympathy. Emily knew this. I needed somewhere close, I said simply. Whatever. Listen, I need Ethan's vaccination records for camp. Where did you put them? Not how are you? Not are you okay? Just another demand. In the filing cabinet in the study. 3rd drawer, blue folder. Great, thanks. She paused. So have you thought about Maplewood Springs? They have an opening next month. The retirement home, as if I had been considering it rather than having it thrust upon me. I don't think Maplewood is for me, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Mom, don't be difficult. It's a nice place. They have activities and people your age. No, Emily. A sharp exhale. Fine, but you need to figure something out. Daniel's mother wants to use the guest room when she visits next month. Of course, the other grandmother, the one who sent expensive gifts and took lavish vacations with Emily and Daniel, but rarely spent actual time with Ethan. I understand, I replied, though I didn't. I couldn't understand how my daughter had become this person. Good. I'll let you know when we're moving your things out. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone, a strange sense of clarity washing over me. This call, so cold and transactional, crystallized everything I had been feeling but couldn't articulate. For years, I had been making excuses for Emily's behavior. She was stressed, she was ambitious, she had so much on her plate. But the truth was simpler and more painful. She simply didn't value me anymore. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, Robert's photograph in my hands. I kept my promise, I told him. I took care of her, but she's not taking care of me. My eyes fell on my battered leather purse where the copy of yesterday's paperwork sat. The documents I had signed so obediently, the papers I had subtly altered with a single checked box before signing. A small act of self-preservation that Emily and Daniel in their arrogance had missed completely. In 4 weeks, when the processing was complete, they would discover what I had done not out of malice, but out of necessity. The property in Lakewood that Robert had left solely to me, our secret sanctuary, would remain mine, not part of the estate they so eagerly divided. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something. It was mine. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to think not about what Emily needed, but what I needed. I reached for my phone again, this time calling a number I hadn't used in years. Hello, Thomas. It's Margaret Collins. I need your legal advice. Thomas Bradley's office smelled of old books and coffee. At 73, he was semi-retired, but he'd been Robert's friend for 40 years and our family lawyer for nearly as long. His eyebrows rose as he reviewed the documents I'd brought. Margaret, you checked box 14C. He looked at me over his reading glasses. Did you understand what you were doing? I nodded, smoothing my skirt with trembling hands. I did. And they didn't notice. They didn't even look. Daniel just told me where to sign. Thomas leaned back in his chair, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Robert would have appreciated the irony. He was right. Robert had always admired quiet strength, the kind that didn't announce itself. In our 44 years of marriage, I'd seen him outmaneuver countless aggressive businessmen with nothing more than patience and attention to detail. Tell me about the property again, I asked, though I knew the story by heart. I just wanted to hear it from someone who remembered Robert kindly. Thomas' eyes softened. Just over 5 years ago, right after his diagnosis, Robert came to see me. He wanted to protect you and ensure you'd always have a place that was yours alone. He tapped the folder. The Lakewood cottage was his gift to you. He specifically arranged for it to remain separate from the family estate, the Lakewood cottage, your little sanctuary by the water. We'd purchased it for a song 32 years ago, when the area was still undeveloped. Robert had seen the potential in the weathered little cottage with its unobstructed view. Over the years, we'd renovated it bit by bit, turning it into our personal paradise. The property has tripled in value since you bought it, Thomas continued. Conservative estimate puts it at about $3.2 million now. I gasped. That much? That area has exploded in the last decade. Plus, Robert made some smart investments with the rental income. There's a sizable account attached to the property. A strange sensation washed over me. Not quite joy, not quite vindication, but something in between. For years, Emily and Daniel had treated me as financially dependent on them, conveniently forgetting that I had supported them countless times. When will they find out? I asked. 4 weeks, give or take. When the estate finalization goes through, they'll realize the Lakewood property wasn't included. Thomas paused. Margaret, they're going to be angry. I smiled sadly. They're already angry, Thomas. They just don't know it yet. The next day, I checked out of the motel. Thomas had insisted I stay in his guest house until I figured out my next steps. Eleanor would have my head if she knew I let you stay in that flea trap, he'd said, referring to his late wife. The guest house was a charming little cottage behind his main home with a small garden and enough privacy to think clearly. For the first time in days, I spent the morning calling the few friends I'd managed to maintain, despite Emily's subtle disapproval. Most were shocked to hear what had happened. But why would they do that? My friend Helen kept asking. After everything you've done for them. I had no answer. Or rather, I had too many. Greed, entitlement, the slow poison of taking someone for granted until they become invisible. On the third day at Thomasa, I found myself sorting through the single suitcase of belongings I'd managed to take with me. At the bottom, wrapped in a scarf, was a small, leather-bound book, Robert's journal. He'd given it to me on his last Christmas, his handwriting shaky, but determined. Read it when you need to remember us, he'd whispered. I'd never opened it, too afraid of the grief it might unleash, but now, sitting in the quiet of Thomas' garden, I felt ready. I needed Robert's voice, his wisdom. The first entry was dated shortly after his diagnosis, September 15th, 2020. Margaret doesn't know I've seen through Emily's plan. Our daughter has always been clever, but she thinks I don't notice how she's already rearranging our lives, making decisions about Margaret's future. I've always been proud of Emily's ambition, but I fear it's hardened her heart. I spoke with Thomas today about protecting Margaret. The Lakewood cottage will be her security, her escape if needed. I've arranged everything to keep it separate from the main estate. Emily won't know until it's too late to contest. I hope I'm wrong about our daughter. I hope that when I'm gone, she'll show Margaret the love and respect she deserves. But I've seen the coldness in her eyes when she thinks no one's looking. How she speaks to her mother when I'm out of the room. Margaret believes the best in everyone, especially her children. It's her greatest strength and her greatest vulnerability. She won't see this coming, until it's too late. I closed the book, tears streaming down my face. Robert had known all along. He had seen what I couldn't bear to acknowledge, that Emily had been planning to discard me for years. The next entry confirmed my fears. December 3rd, 2020. Overheard Emily and Daniel talking about elder care options for Margaret after I'm gone. Not about bringing her to live with them, but about facilities where she wouldn't be lonely. As if warehousing my wife would be doing her a favor. I confronted Emily. She claimed they were just exploring all possibilities. The look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching told a different story. She sees her mother as a burden, an obligation to be managed. I've added more to Margaret's separate account. Thomas has the details. The Lakewood cottage isn't just a property, it's her independence. Page after page revealed Robert's quiet battle to secure my future, his growing concern about Emily's character, his love for me shining through every word. In his final entry, written just days before he died, Robert seemed at peace. April 28, 2021. Everything is in place for Margaret. The Lakewood cottage, the accounts all secured in her name only. Emily doesn't suspect a thing. My greatest regret is leaving Margaret to face what's coming alone. But she is stronger than she knows. When the time comes, she'll find that strength. I've loved her since we were practically children. She deserves so much better than what Emily is planning. I hope someday our daughter realizes what she's throwing away. Not just her mother's love, but her own capacity for compassion. Margaret, if you're reading this, remember you were always enough. More than enough. And you deserve a life filled with the same kindness you've given others. Don't let them convince you otherwise. I closed the journal, clutching it to my chest, as the sun began to set over Thomas's garden. For the first time since that awful day in the lawyer's office, I felt something other than grief and betrayal. I felt ready. The ringing of my phone shattered the morning quiet of Thomas's garden. I didn't need to check the caller ID. The specific tone I'd set for Emily years ago blared through the peaceful space. Exactly 4 weeks had passed since that day in the lawyer's office. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Emily. What the hell did you do?" Her voice was ice and fire simultaneously. I set down my tea, surprising myself with how steady my hand was. "I believe you'll need to be more specific. The Lakewood property, it's not in the estate paperwork. The lawyer said you checked some box that kept it separate, box 14C, I said calmly. You knew exactly what you were doing. She was practically screaming now. You deliberately tricked us. The accusation might have wounded me a month ago. Now it almost made me laugh. I signed documents. I was asked to sign. If you and Daniel had bothered to review them properly, you might have noticed. This is theft. No, Emily, it's mine. The Lakewood cottage was always mine. Robert left it to me specifically separate from the estate. He made sure of it. Your father knew exactly what he was doing, I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. He saw how you were treating me even before he died. He wanted to make sure I was protected. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. We're coming over, she finally said. Where are you staying? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse to keep my sanctuary private, but another part, perhaps the stronger part, wanted to face her to stand my ground. I'm at Thomas's guest house. The old lawyer. Why would you never mind? We'll be there in an hour. The call ended abruptly. I sat motionless for several minutes, processing what had just happened and what was about to happen. Then I called Thomas. They're on their way, I told him. Just Emily and Daniel, I think. Do you want me to be there? He asked, concern evident in his voice. No, I need to do this myself. I paused, but then added, maybe stay nearby. I'll be in the main house. Just shout if you need me. I used the next hour to prepare myself, not just emotionally, but physically. I showered, styled my hair, and put on my favorite navy dress, the one Robert always said made my eyes shine. I wanted Emily to see me not as the discarded mother, but as the woman I truly was, strong, dignified, whole. When the doorbell rang, I was ready. Emily stood on the porch, Daniel slightly behind her. She wore her power suit, the one she saved for important negotiations. Her eyes widened slightly at my appearance, as if she'd expected to find me disheveled and broken. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They entered the small guest house, Emily's gaze sweeping critically over the modest furnishings. I led them to the sitting area where I'd prepared coffee and Emily's favorite lemon cookies, the ones I used to bake for her school lunches. "Let's get to the point," Emily said, ignoring the offered refreshments. "You deliberately withheld the Lakewood property from the estate division." "I didn't withhold anything," I replied evenly. "The Lakewood cottage was never part of the estate to begin with. Your father left it directly to me." "That's impossible. Everything was supposed to be divided equally." "Not everything. Robert made specific provisions for me. The Lakewood cottage was my security." Daniel cleared his throat, speaking for the first time. "The property is worth almost $3 million now." "I'm aware." "Be reasonable, Margaret," he said, dropping the mom he'd used for 16 years. "That's a significant asset. It should be shared." I looked at him steadily. "Like your home was shared with me before you decided I was inconvenient." He had the grace to look away. Emily paced the small room, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood floor. "This is ridiculous. You're being petty because we asked you to move out." "You didn't ask Emily. You informed me I was being discarded." I kept my voice calm. "And you didn't just ask me to move out. You told me I wasn't family." "I never said, 'You're not family.' You just stayed because it was convenient. Those were your exact words." Her mouth opened, then closed. For a brief moment, something like shame flickered across her face. "I was upset," she finally said. "But that doesn't change the fact that you deliberately deceived us about the Lakewood cottage." "No, I simply protected what was rightfully mine, just as your father intended." Daniel leaned forward, adopting his negotiation posture. "Look, we can work something out. Sell the property and divide the proceeds. That would be fair." "Fair?" The word tasted bitter on my tongue. "Was it fair when I sold my condo to move in with you? When I spent 5 years raising your son while you built your careers? When you introduced me as the help rather than your mother?" Daniel had the decency to look uncomfortable, but Emily's expression hardened. "Always the martyr," she snapped. "No one forced you to help with Ethan." "No, they didn't. I helped because I love him, because that's what family does, and now you're punishing us by keeping the Lakewood cottage." I took a deep breath. "I'm not punishing anyone, Emily. I'm simply taking care of myself since you've made it clear you won't." A sudden noise from outside drew our attention. Through the window, I could see Ethan riding his bike in Thomas' driveway with Thomas pretending to chase after him. The boy's laughter floated through the open window. "Is that—" Emily stood abruptly. "You've been seeing Ethan behind our backs." "No, he's here with Thomas. It's the first time I've seen him since I left." Emily moved to the window, watching her son play. For a moment, her expression softened. "He's been asking about you," she admitted reluctantly. "Wants to know when Grandma's coming home." The words pierced my heart. "What did you tell him?" "That you needed some time to yourself." She turned back to me. "What was I supposed to say? That we kicked you out?" "You could have told him the truth. That you decided I wasn't needed anymore." Daniel stood, joining Emily at the window. "Look, this is getting us nowhere. The fact is, we need to resolve the property issue." I squared my shoulders. "There is nothing to resolve. The Lakewood cottage is mine. Your father ensured that. We could contest it, Emily threatened. Take it to court. You could try, I agreed. But Thomas has all the documentation showing it was Robert's explicit wish. Plus, you signed the papers too, Emily. Her face flushed with anger. This isn't over. Actually, it is. I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. I've given you both 16 years of unwavering support. I've loved your son as my own. I never complained, never asked for recognition. And when you decided I was disposable, I left without a fight. I walked to the door and opened it. The Lakewood cottage is non-negotiable. It's my home now, my sanctuary just as Robert intended. Emily stared at me, her expression a mixture of rage and something else, perhaps respect or simply surprise at my newfound backbone. Ethan misses you, she said abruptly. He cries at night. The words were like a knife to my heart, but I refused to be manipulated. He's welcome to visit me. I'm still his grandmother, even if you've decided I'm not your mother. And where exactly will he visit you? Here in this guest house? No, I said, my decision crystallizing in that moment. At the Lakewood cottage. I'm moving there next week. Emily's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. It's 2 hours away. I'm very serious. It's my home now. Daniel placed a hand on Emily's arm, guiding her toward the door. We should go. As they stepped onto the porch, I called after them. Tell Ethan I love him. That will never change, regardless of what's happened between us. Emily paused, not turning back. This isn't what Dad would have wanted? I smiled sadly, though she couldn't see it. Actually, Emily, it's exactly what he wanted. He knew me better than anyone, and he knew you too. They walked away without another word, straight-backed and rigid. Through the window, I watched as they approached Ethan, who was still riding circles around Thomas. The boy spotted his parents and quickly abandoned his bike, running to them with open arms. But before he reached them, he turned and waved enthusiastically at me through the window. I waved back, tears stinging my eyes. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The Lakewood cottage was exactly as I remembered, and entirely different at the same time. The weathered blue shutters, the creaking front porch, the way light danced across the hardwood floors in the afternoon. All this remained unchanged. But now, without Robert's booming laugh filling the rooms, or his reading glasses perpetually misplaced on various surfaces, the house felt both hollow and full of possibilities. It had been 2 weeks since I'd moved in. 2 weeks of reacquainting myself with solitude, of learning to hear my own voice again, without the constant background noise of other people's expectations. I was arranging wildflowers in Robert's favorite vase when the phone rang. Unknown number. I considered letting it go to voicemail, then changed my mind. Hello, Mrs. Cass Collins. A man's voice hesitant. It's Daniel. My hand tightened around the receiver. Daniel, this is unexpected. I know. He paused. I'm in town near you. I mean in Lakewood. Why? I have a conference in Philadelphia. I drove down to... I don't know why I'm here, honestly. He sounded different somehow. Less confident, more human. Could we talk in person? My first instinct was to refuse to protect the sanctuary I'd created, but something in his voice gave me pause. There's a coffee shop called Seaside Caf on Harbor Street. I can meet you there in 30 minutes. Thank you, he said, and I could have sworn he meant it. Seaside Caf was quiet for a Saturday, just a few tourists lingering over late lunches. I spotted Daniel immediately sitting at a corner table, staring into a mug, as if it contained answers to questions he hadn't yet asked. He stood when he saw me awkwardly pulling out a chair. "Thank you for coming." I sat studying him. He looked tired, the polished corporate facade cracked enough to show the strained man beneath. "Why are you here, Daniel?" He twisted his wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd noticed years ago. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last spoke about what you said about how we treated you." I waited, unwilling to make this easier for him. "Ethan cries for you every night," he continued. "He doesn't understand why you're gone." "And what have you told him?" Daniel looked genuinely pained. "Nothing that makes sense, not even to me anymore." He took a deep breath. "The truth is, I'm here because I need to apologize." Of all the things I'd expected from this meeting, an apology wasn't one of them. "Emily doesn't know I'm here," he added quickly. "She'd be furious if she knew." "Then why risk it?" He looked out the window toward the ocean, barely visible in the distance. "Because I can't sleep. Because every time I look at Ethan, I see the hurt in his eyes. Because I stood by while Emily treated you like you were disposable, and I know it was wrong." I sipped my coffee, giving myself time to process his words. "It wasn't just Emily, Daniel. You were complicit." He nodded, accepting the accusation. "I was. I let it happen because it was easier. Because confronting Emily is difficult," I finished for him. "She's always been strong-willed." "That's a charitable way of putting it." He gave a rueful smile. "She's become, I don't know how to describe it, cold calculating. Not just with you, with everyone." "Including you." His silence was answer enough. "Ethan asked me yesterday if we could visit you," he said after a moment. I didn't know what to say. Emily has forbidden him from even mentioning your name. The pain of that revelation was physical, a knife twisting in my chest. He's 8 years old. He shouldn't be caught in the middle of this. "I know." Daniel met my eyes directly for the first time. "That's partly why I'm here. Would you be open to seeing him if I brought him without Emily knowing?" The question hung between us, weighted with implications. I thought of Ethan, his gap-toothed smile, the way he'd curl against me during thunderstorms, his endless questions about the world, my grandson, my heart. "Yes," I said simply. "I would like that very much." Relief washed over Daniel's face. "Thank you. He misses you terribly." "I miss him too, every day." We sat in silence for a moment, the calf's ambient noise filling the space between us. "There's something else," Daniel said finally, his voice lower. "Something you should know." "What is it?" He glanced around as if worried about being overheard. "Emily's been different since Robert died. Harder, more focused on appearances and status than anything else." "I've noticed." "No, it's worse than you know." He leaned forward. 2 months ago, I overheard her on the phone. She was talking to someone about accelerating the timeline now that you were out of the picture." "Timeline for what?" "Selling your house. You're in Robert's house. I mean, the one you lived in for 35 years. I frowned. "But that house isn't worth much. It's in an older neighborhood and it needs work." "It's not about the house, it's about the land." Daniel's expression was grim. "Apparently, there's been interest from developers. The entire block could be rezoned for commercial use. Emily's been in talks with them for over a year." The revelation struck me like a physical blow. "A year? But I was still living there when Robert died. She was planning this while I was still in the house." Daniel nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "That's why she was so eager to get you into a retirement home. The developers want to break ground by next spring." I sat back, struggling to absorb this new betrayal. Not just discarded, but deliberately removed so Emily could profit from selling my home. The home where she'd grown up, where every doorframe was marked with her height through the years, where Robert and I had built our life together. "I'm sorry," Daniel said quietly. "I should have told you sooner. I didn't know how." "Why tell me now?" He looked troubled. "Because it's wrong. Because Ethan found the photo albums you'd stored in the attic. The ones with all the family pictures in the trash last week. Emily had thrown them away." His voice broke slightly. He was crying, trying to pull them out, and she just told him they were garbage, that we needed to declutter before the move. I closed my eyes, imagining Ethan's confusion and distress. When I opened them again, Daniel was watching me with something like respect. "You're stronger than all of us, Margaret. You always have been. I see that now." "Not stronger, just older. I've had more practice at survival." He smiled sadly. "Would next Saturday work for bringing Ethan? I could tell Emily I'm taking him fishing." I nodded, surprising myself with the surge of joy that rose in my chest. Yes, Saturday would be perfect. As we parted outside the cafe, Daniel hesitated, then said, "Robert would be proud of you. Standing your ground, finding your voice." The unexpected kindness brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saying that." I watched him walk away. This man I'd thought I knew. This person who was slowly revealing himself to be more complex than I'd realized. Not a hero, certainly not blameless, but perhaps not entirely a villain either. On the drive home, I found myself wondering about second chances. Not for Emily. Some wounds cut too deep for easy healing, but for the fractured pieces of family that remained. For Ethan, for myself, perhaps even in some limited way, for Daniel. The horizon stretched before me, endless and blue, as I turned onto the coastal road that led to my house. My house, my life, my terms. For the first time in years, I felt the stirrings of genuine hope. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. The kind of September day that feels caught between seasons. Summer's warmth lingering in the air, while autumn's crispness waits just around the corner. I'd been up since dawn, unable to contain my anticipation. Ethan was coming today. I'd spent all week preparing baking his favorite chocolate chip cookies, setting up the spare bedroom with colorful quilts and a nightlight just in case, and clearing a space on the beach for the kite I'd bought him. I wanted everything to be perfect, even though I knew what mattered most was simply being together again. At 10 Huzure sharp, a car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as Daniel helped Ethan out of his booster seat. The boy looked around curiously, taking in the weathered, shingled house and the ocean just visible beyond the dunes. Then he saw me at the window. His face transformed, breaking into a smile so radiant it brought tears to my eyes. He broke free from Daniel's hand and ran full tilt toward the porch, nearly stumbling in his haste. I threw open the door just as he reached the steps. And then he was in my arms, his small body crashing into mine with the force of a tiny hurricane. Grandma, you're here!" I held him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his hair, still baby sweet at 8, mixed with the faint traces of the citrus shampoo he'd always insisted on. "I'm here, sweetheart. I've missed you so much." "I missed you too. Mom said you went away, but I knew you wouldn't leave without saying goodbye." My heart clenched at the innocent faith in his words. Over Ethan's shoulder, I met Daniel's eyes. He stood awkwardly by the car, hands in his pockets, worry etched across his face. I beckoned him closer. "Come in, both of you." The morning passed in a blur of joy. Ethan explored every corner of the house, exclaiming over the shells I'd collected the view from the upstairs window, the wooden sailboat Robert had carved years ago. He chattered endlessly, filling me in on everything I'd missed his loose tooth. The science project he'd won an award for the new friend at school who could do perfect cartwheels. Daniel stayed mostly quiet, watching us with a complicated expression. When Ethan ran outside to fly his new kite, Daniel finally spoke. "I haven't seen him this happy in months." I nodded, watching through the window as Ethan's kite caught the wind soaring high above the dunes. Children are resilient, but they notice more than we give them credit for. "Emily's pushing for private school next year," Daniel said suddenly. "In New Jersey, it would mean boarding during the week, boarding at 8 years old." I couldn't hide my shock. That's awfully young. "I know. I've tried to talk her out of it, but she's convinced it's the best way to ensure his competitive edge." He made air quotes around the words, his distaste evident. We fell silent, both watching Ethan as he ran along the beach, the kite dancing above him. "I've been thinking about what you said," Daniel continued after a moment, "about how we treated you, about the kind of family we've become." He took a deep breath. "I'm not proud of the role I played." "Why did you let it happen?" I asked quietly. It was the question that had haunted me for years. He considered his answer carefully. "At first, it was easier to go along with Emily to convince myself she knew best. Then it became habit, and after a while..." He shook his head. "After a while, I think I was afraid of her." The admission hung in the air between us, raw and honest. "She's not the person I married," he added softly. "Or maybe she is, and I just didn't want to see it." Before I could respond, Ethan burst through the door, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Grandma, the kite went so high. Did you see?" "I did. Sweetheart, you're a natural kite flyer." "Can we have cookies now? Dad said you made cookies." I laughed, grateful for the interruption. Some conversations weren't meant for young ears. "We certainly can. And afterward, how would you like to help me collect shells for that special jar I showed you?" Ethan's enthusiastic yes seemed to lighten the atmosphere, pushing back the shadows of our previous conversation. The afternoon passed pleasantly. We walked the beach, collected perfect scallop shells, built a sandcastle complete with moat and drawbridge, and returned to the house sandy and content. After dinner, macaroni and cheese, Ethan's favorite, Daniel reluctantly looked at his watch. "We should head back soon. We told your mom we'd be home before dark." Ethan's face fell. "Can't we stay longer, please, Dad?" Daniel and I exchanged glances over Ethan's head. "Not today, buddy," Daniel said gently. "But maybe we can come back soon." "Promise." Ethan looked between us, his eyes big and hopeful. "I promise," Daniel said firmly, surprising me with his conviction. As they prepared to leave, Ethan hugged me tightly. "I don't want to go." I knelt to his level, holding his small hands in mine. "I know, sweetheart, but you can call me anytime, and I'll be right here waiting to see you again." "Mom threw away our pictures," he said suddenly, his voice small. "The ones of you and Grandpa Robert. I tried to save them, but she got mad." My heart broke for him, caught in the crossfire of adult conflicts he couldn't possibly understand. "I have plenty of pictures here," I assured him. "Next time you visit, we'll look at them together, and maybe we can make copies for you to keep." He nodded solemnly. "I'd like that." After one more fierce hug, he ran to the car, leaving Daniel and me alone on the porch. "Thank you for today," I said. It meant the world to him and to me. Daniel nodded, his expression troubled. "Margaret, there's something else you should know. I'm thinking about leaving Emily." The confession stunned me. "Because of how she treated me." "That's part of it. But it's more than that. It's who she's become." The way she treats Ethan when no one's watching. The constant pressure, the emotional manipulation. He ran a hand through his hair. I've been consulting with a lawyer about custody arrangements. I took a moment to absorb this revelation. And you're telling me this because I want Ethan to have you in his life. Because when the time comes, I may need your testimony about what you've observed in our household. He looked away. And because I thought you deserved to know. From the car, Ethan waved frantically, calling for his father to hurry. Daniel turned to go, then paused. We never should have done what we did to you. I hope someday you can forgive me for my part in it. I watched them drive away. Ethan's face pressed against the window, waving until they disappeared around the bend. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, reflecting off the calm surface of the ocean. I stood on the porch long after they'd gone, contemplating forgiveness, family, and the strange winding paths that life sometimes takes. 3 months later, on a crisp December morning, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Daniel's car in the driveway, Ethan bouncing excitedly beside it. My heart leaped at the sight of my grandson, this unexpected joy in my life. But there was something different this time. The car was packed full suitcases, boxes, Ethan's favorite stuffed dinosaur visible through the window. I opened the door as they approached, questions in my eyes. We left, Daniel said simply. For good this time. I looked from him to Ethan, who was grinning widely despite the circumstances. What happened? We can talk about it later, Daniel said, glancing meaningfully at Ethan. Right now, we're looking for a place to stay while I sort things out. Maybe somewhere near here. Ethan suggested we ask if you know of any nice neighborhoods. Understanding dawned. This wasn't just a visit. This was a new beginning. I looked at my grandson, at his hopeful face and trusting eyes. I thought of Robert, of his quiet wisdom and foresight. I thought of the journey that had brought me here to this moment of choice. I might know just the place, I said, opening the door wider to welcome them in. The house Robert had left me wasn't just my sanctuary anymore. It was becoming what it was always meant to be, a home filled with love, second chances, and the quiet strength that comes from choosing kindness over bitterness, even when the path is difficult. As I helped Ethan carry his backpack inside, I caught a glimpse of the ocean through the window. Vast and changeable and beautiful, like life itself. Like the future stretching before us, unwritten and full of possibility. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until the end.